He learned from the first meeting that it was a little humiliating and nothing happened. And I think Rubio, who has many jobs, but is the more traditional diplomat.
President Zelensky is back at the White House today. His big hope is for more American military assistance, including securing long-range Tomahawk missiles. But things have become more complicated with news of a plan of a second meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, this time in Hungary. Let's speak to Stephen Erlanger, who is Chief Diplomatic Correspondent for Europe for the New York Times. Morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
Let's begin by talking about Zelensky's meeting today. He is heading to the White House. I mean, it's his third meeting in a year. Zelensky had pretty high hopes, and the mood music seemed to be, before the announcement of the Putin-Trump second meeting, that Tomahawk missiles could well be given to Ukraine. What would be the significance of that?
Well, I think the threat of it has prompted Putin to call Trump to try to set up this other meeting. So I think these things are all a bit connected. I mean, Trump has been leaning more toward Ukraine lately. He flops back and forth because he thinks Putin has disappointed him and isn't interested in ending the war, which he isn't interested, frankly, in ending the war. So Zelensky wants so-called deep strike weapons that can hit deeper inside Russia. I mean, the Ukrainians are already going after Russia's fuel industry, its refinery plants, etc., which has caused great damage. The problem with the Tomahawks is, one, they're really long range. They can hit Moscow. So I think a lot of people in the Pentagon are saying, whoa, let's think about this again. There aren't enormous numbers of Tomahawks. Tomahawks are low-flying, slow cruise missiles. They're very good. They're mostly fired off ships, and there are very few ground-based launchers available for Tomahawks. So there are lots of reasons why this is floated of an idea, but in practical terms may mean less. Also, since it's an old weapon, it's much more likely the Russians can figure out how to intercept them on the way, which means you'd have to fire a bunch of them all at once, and there aren't a bunch of them to fire. So I think there's a lot of talk about this, but that Trump is beginning to pull back even from this suggestion.
So should President Zelensky take heart from another meeting between Trump and Putin?
No. Because he knows what happened the last time. I think, part of his job today in the White House is to buck up President Trump and make him understand what Ukraine wants and is willing to concede, and prepare him for a Putin who really is quite careful at manipulating Donald Trump into thinking that Trump's desire for a ceasefire is also Putin's desire. I mean, frankly, at the moment, the war is not going anywhere. It's not like there's going to be a breakthrough from either side anytime soon. I do think Trump wants to end the war, but I don't think he still understands the passions on both sides that are driving the war.
Do you think Trump's learnt anything from the last meeting with Putin? I mean, he rolled out the red carpet, he got the full-on special treatment, and yet nothing came of it. And in some ways, Trump was a little bit humiliated by what Putin did. Do you think there will be a difference in tone? Do you think it will be approached differently by Donald Trump?
Well, it's already different because, frankly, there's going to be a preparatory meeting, which there wasn't last time. They just came to Alaska. But Rubio will meet with Lavrov at least a week before the meeting, so that they will go over an agenda, they'll go over talking points, they'll go over the key issues. None of that happened in Alaska. And it's also interesting, it's going to, if it happens in Hungary, because Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, is kind of an ally of Putin inside Russia. He gets a lot of energy, gas, oil from Russia, has refused to sanction those supplies, to the annoyance of his European colleagues. I think if a red carpet gets rolled out, it'll be Viktor Orban who actually does the unrolling.
Is Trump capable of learning? And I don't mean that in a patronising way, but you mentioned yourself, he flip-flops so much. The fact that he's approaching this meeting differently, doesn't necessarily signal that he learned anything from the first meeting.
Well, I think he learned from the first meeting that it was a little humiliating and nothing happened. And I think Rubio, who has many jobs, but is the more traditional diplomat. I mean, seems to be more engaged here this time than Steve Witkoff, who is Trump's pal and is not a diplomat. And last time Witkoff kind of went to Moscow and misunderstood the Russian position and came back thinking he'd seized the golden egg. But the golden egg turned out to, be plastic. And I think Rubio will be much more careful. So in that sense, I think Trump has learned something. He still likes Putin. He thinks Putin's great and they can do great business together. And Ukraine is kind of in the way. But he's angry with Putin for continuing the war when Trump sees no purpose in it.
What pressure, what leverage does Donald Trump have over Putin? What pressure can he apply? Because lots of people are talking about the success with Benjamin Netanyahu, but there's a different relationship there, isn't there? Trump could threaten to pull weapons from Israel supporting them. There's not that same relationship there. So I'm just wondering what you think it is that Trump's approach will be.
Well, the leverage goes both ways with Putin, don't forget. I mean, Russia is still an enormously powerful nuclear power. It has a seat at the Security Council. It has used only a fraction of its military might. It is building up militarily. It can threaten Europe. I'm not saying Putin wants to do that right now, but there are a lot of Europeans very nervous about it and think if Ukraine falls apart, they're next. So Putin, even if the whole idea was like tomahawks when Trump was talking about it and Putin arranged this meeting and then made it clear on the phone to Trump that tomahawks was a pretty bad idea, and now Trump is kind of pulling back, and whether he threatened, to end relations or use even tactical nuclear weapons, don't forget that's out on the table. It always has been. Now, for Trump, part of the leverage is public embarrassment of Putin, but part of it is his efforts to limit Russia's oil sales, because Russia lives on its oil sales much more than on its natural gas sales, because the profit's much higher on oil. And Trump is trying to pressure India to stop buying cheap Russian oil. He hasn't really tried this with China, but I think that is real leverage on Putin because, after all, the economy matters and money drives the war as well.
Stephen, before I let you go, I must ask you about John Bolton. Of course, he served as Trump's national security advisor, then became a really vocal critic of the president. He's been criminally indicted on federal charges. Let's have a listen to President Trump talking about that.
I didn't know that. You told me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes.
Have you reviewed the case against him?
That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes. Will I what?
Have you reviewed the case against him?
No, I haven't. But I just think he's a bad person. Okay, anybody else?
I mean, that for British audience is quite mind-boggling, the idea that the leader of a country would say essentially that somebody's bad when they're facing a court case. Just explain to us, is this politically motivated? What's the reaction in the US?
Well, it is mind-boggling, frankly, because it's open retribution by the Justice Department of people who criticize Trump or people who tried to prosecute Trump. I mean, he's done the same with the district attorney of New York, and he's done the same to the federal attorney who looked into his own mishandling of classified papers. I mean, they've all been indicted. He's indicted James Comey, the FBI director. I mean, this is clear retribution. And if you believe that Trump had no idea that Bolton was going to be indicted, I'd like to sell you the Brooklyn Bridge.
Stephen, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. It's always good to get your analysis.
Thanks a lot.
That's Stephen Erlanger, who is Chief Diplomatic Correspondent for Europe for the New York Times.